For those of you who don't know, Barb has a YouTube channel, which I'm sure she'll post the link to, that she does these short videos talking about different Bonanza topics, from anything from the episodes to, as you'll see today, certain specific topics like the horses and tack, and later you're going to see guest stars one and child stars ones. But like I said, she's up to 100 of these. They're very interesting and they're short. They're what, like 8 minutes? So 5 to 6 minutes long.
Under 10 minutes.
So they're real good. So let me go ahead and start the first one. This is her one about horses.
Welcome to Ponderosa North for the love of Bonanza. Today we're going to talk about the other 4 stars of the show, the horses. Buck, Sport, Chub, and Cochise. The horses were chosen to be very distinct from one another. Again, we're enhancing the color of the show that they started filming in 1959. And so you could just recognize everybody from a distance. So each one was distinct from one another and particularly chosen for each rider. So let's start with Buck. Here's Buck. He is a buckskin quarter horse, played by Dunny Wagner, who started his career in Gunsmoke. He was ridden by James Arness, Matt Dillon in Gunsmoke, but luckily for us, he graduated to Bonanza in 1959 and became Ben's horse. Like I said, he's a buckskin quarter horse. Quarter horses get their name because they're very fast in short distances. A quarter horse can do a quarter mile in about 23 seconds. So they used to race them in a quarter mile. They're very powerful in the rear. They're very good-tempered usually, and are the chosen breed for cowboys for that very reason, for those quick, short spurts and for the power in the rear. So Lauren and horses were not exactly friends to begin with. Some people don't know that to gain trust from a horse, it's like hours and hours and hundreds of hours in the saddle for a horse to gain trust in their rider. So in the beginning, trust was yet to be built, and you'll often see scenes of the 4 Cartwrights mounted and they all trying to go in different directions. And you know, the horses are there is safety in number for horses. They're afraid of everything. Their instinct is to flee, and when there's danger, and to a horse there is always danger, to stick together. So often it would take a day to do a quick scene of the horses trying to go in separate directions. So Lauren had another name for Buck, according to Michael Landon, and that name was "Whoa, you son of a bitch." So they had, if you're going to be in a Western, Lauren, it's sort of an evil necessity. You got to be around horses. The other thing I'd like to draw attention to, as far as Buck is concerned, is that he had a beautiful tack. He had beautiful saddle and bridle, and I'm just going to show you a picture of his bridle. You see there? It is adorned with silver, and the reason I believe it is adorned with silver is because Bonanza takes place during the Comstock Lode, which was a silver gold strike in 1859. And silver was everywhere, and it took place in Virginia City, Lake Tahoe area. It was, I think, the largest silver strike in U.S. history, and it generated $700 million in 20 years. So silver was plentiful, and Buck is adorned with silver, I believe, for that reason, because of the Bonanza of that time. The show was filmed exactly 100 years after the Comstock Lode strike. Even Lauren's or Ben's saddle is adorned with silver conchos and silver flowerets. Okay, so let's move on to Sport. Here he is. There's Sport. Thoroughbred cross. Played by 2 horses. This is Adam's horse. Played by Candy and Beauty. Some research says the name of the horse was Candy and Scout. I'm going to stick with Candy and Beauty because that's mostly what I've heard. You can tell them apart by the markings on their legs. So this is Candy. Oh. See, 3 white socks, and on the front right is that white snippet. Front left is that white snippet. And then Beauty is just 4 white socks. Both horses are a handful, to say the least. Kudos to Purnell for handling these horses. Both of them very feisty, very fiery, dancing and prancing and head flings and all over the place. But I guess Purnell liked the challenge, or liked a feisty horse, even in Woman of Fire. He says, no, you can't ride my horse. My horse is far too dangerous for you. Correct. He needed a firm hand, and Purnell was able to do that. So Sport came by his name very honestly. This horse could fly. If you see any of the chase scenes where the 4 of them are riding after or chasing somebody down, Sport is way out in front. He is a competitive, athletic horse, and hi, Penny. And he just flew. Very graceful, very fluid, lovely horse. He and Purnell were just like, peanut butter and honey. They were just as one. And I just loved watching Purnell ride Sport. I think that's it for Sport. Let's move on to Chub. Here's Chubby. Now Chubby is a quarter horse again, dark brown, almost black. He's played by a horse by Tomahawk. And my research, I've been researching these horses since about the 80s, and I understand that this horse was named Tomahawk because of this facial mark. He has a facial mark in the shape of a tomahawk. Now, the horses were provided by Fat Jones Stables. They provided a lot of the horses for a lot of the westerns during the time. And I talked to Betsy Sue, and she was at the stables at the time. She's Fat Jones's granddaughter. She doesn't remember or recall Chub being called Tomahawk, but I'm going to stick with it. What else would you name a horse with a tomahawk on his face? But Chubby was a very gentle, sweet, willing, lovely horse, lovely animal, never gave any trouble, always did his job. Very large horse, big man, big horse. So he was probably 16 hands high. What is a hand? Well, in the old days, when you're out in the field and you're trying to measure a horse, what did you have at hand? You had your hands. So a hand is 4 inches. So you measure a horse from the ground to the top of the shoulder. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So Chubby was quite a large horse to carry a large man, but just a lovely, lovely animal. So we'll move on to Cochise. Here's Cochise. Now this is an American paint horse. In 1940, the Quarter Horse Registry was founded, and they didn't allow colored horses in their registry. So in 1962, the American Paint Horse Association was founded, and that's what Cochise would have been, an American paint horse. Tabiano paint horse, as opposed to an Overo or an Overo paint horse. Tabiano has a light back and white feet. An Overo has a dark back and dark feet. The other way to look at it is that a Tabiano is a white horse with dark markings, and an Overo is a dark horse with white markings. Tragedy struck in 1962 when vandals broke into Fat Jones stables, and they killed and mutilated several horses, and Cochise was one of them. And they had to euthanize this poor animal, and it was just a heinous crime. Michael Landon put out a reward to find out who had done this terrible crime, and they never found out who did it. So obviously the search was on to replace the original Cochise. You can tell the original Cochise, he's got a black neck, but there's a little white smudge on his neck there. So that's the original Cochise. Very lovely horse. He and Mike had a great time together. Mike was very athletic and very adaptable to horseback riding, and he did a lot of tricks with Cochise. He got him to rear, and he'd get him to drink water out of his hat, and he'd do swing mounts on him. So they had a great time together, at least it looked like. So I think Mike rode probably 3 to 4 paint horses. So like I said before, all horses are distinct from one another. There they all are. Buck was a very stoic, proud, kind of regal animal like Ben, and Sport was kind of complicated and cocky and unpredictable like Adam. Chub was just a sweet, gentle giant, just like Haas, and Cochise was kind of flashy and full of personality and let's go do stuff, and just a charmer, just like little Joe. I could go on and on talking about horses, but I'm going to stop there. If you have any more information about the horses, I'd be glad to hear about them. Put them in the comments below. Please share, subscribe, and like, and we will see you next time on Ponderosa North for the love of Bonanza. Right, Sarge? Righto.
Is that one of your early ones, Barb?
I was getting started and was a little bit shy and a little kind of soft spoken, but I think I covered all the bases there. Does anybody have any questions about the horses?
Did you have any updates since you recorded that? Because you must, how long ago did you record that? Probably the beginning of COVID, a couple of years ago.
22, but the next ones about the tack, I've got more information about the horses in those two as well. Rachel's got a question?
It's not really so much about the horse, but the I guess you would call them the little models of the different horses. Was that like a recent production, or is that the toys that they offered back when the show was in production?
Good
Those were
question.
produced for the 50th anniversary. The 50th anniversary that I designed is on the back of those boxes, but they were specially done for the 50th anniversary. Andy was here. He could, I don't know if Andy's here yet, but he could clarify that. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was for. Andy actually sent those to me. He promised, I promised if I do the logo, you have to pay me in the horses. So I got all the boxes of the horses, and he sent them to me. So I was very, very thankful that he did. And probably will stay with me. They'll probably go in my grave with me.
I know you mentioned showing your illustrations at some point. Could you show us the logos on the back of those as well, if it's not too much trouble to dig them out?
Yeah, I can. I'll go down into my archive. Oh yeah, here I have it right here. This was for the, I don't know if you can be able to see it. Yeah, so Andy had some work to do because I used absolutely everybody. He had to get permission from everybody. He can tell you the tale of that, but yeah, it was quite an intricate logo. That was what 2009, right?
Louise?
Well, I wanted to tell Barb how wonderful her 2009 logo was. I admired it then when I really didn't even know who you were, Barb, and it is just, and it is still an amazing logo, and I wanted to commend you on that. Also, I did an article for Breyer Horse Magazine. All of those horses from 2009 were made by Breyer. And I did an article in the Breyer magazine when Cochise came out. And I talked about the different horses and Joe's, Michael Landon's love of Cochise. And I had mentioned in there that Chubb might have had a little Morgan in him because he was so big. And I don't know if that was right or not, or true or not, but I had read that he was a Morgan cross quarter horse. So because he was tall, he was 16 hands probably. So the only other thing I wanted to say was that Andy promoted this and to have me do the article, but I didn't get any gifts.
You got to make sure you put that up front, right?
Well,
Agent Louise.
just saying.
You got to remember that now. Remember that.
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, I was just going to say, I very much enjoyed your presentation there, Bob. Hadn't seen that before. But I didn't realize it was that early that Cochise was killed. 62. Are you sure? I thought it was later than that because I mean he uses that same horse for a lot of the seasons.
I can only go by what the internet tells me. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
Only go by what my research tells me. Like Andy's the expert. I have most of the time when I'm doing the research for these things, I'm doing a lot of cross referencing. So you know, times there'll be other sources.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just surprised because that horse is very distinctive. That Cochise, the original Cochise, is very distinctive, and I'm sure he rode it. I mean, that would only been sort of, as you say, 62. That would only be season 3, wouldn't it? And I'm sure he's riding that horse later than that. But as I say, I don't know. But I do take a lot of interest in Joe, so I thought the horse was around longer than that. I mean, yes, I know that what happened happened, and that was terrible. But I did think it was a bit later. But just wondered. So
I think you might be seeing stock footage because some of those early stock footage scenes of them riding through the meadows and riding in various places were used in later
yeah, I know that was the case, but
Yeah.
as I say, it just seemed as if that horse featured for a good deal of time, much longer than just, as I say, the first couple of seasons. So yeah, that could well be the case, but because that's always the horse I think of whenever I think of Cochise, and Joe. That's the horse that comes to mind, is that one. I mean, afterwards, I think he had loads of different ones because I mean sometimes he'd ride to town on one with a white backside, and by the time he got to town the horse had a black backside, because they literally just as you say, lots of stock footage and things, and and it was more distinctive on later on, that because some of the horses had bigger blocks of color than as I say, I but yeah, you're probably right. It was when it just lots of stock footage that they'd already filmed, fortunately, of as I say, the one that I always think of as Cochise, that very first one. Yeah.
And the fact is that that Cochise was killed, was kind of a disaster, not only for the horse but continuity wise, because every paint horse is different. Every paint horse has, I mean, they did a pretty good job finding paint horses that were as similar as they probably could find. I mean, I had a paint horse, but he was sorrel and white. So all paint horses are black and white, like Cochise. So they did a pretty good job of trying to find a Cochise that was, continuity wise, because they did have all that footage, all that far off footage. So
yeah. It's just that does make me laugh on a couple of occasions when, as I say, Joe's horse literally does backside changes color from leaving the ranch to get into town. And I think, wonder what happened to that poor animal on the way. Should have said that. I should have said that in the bloopers bit, shouldn't I? Really, not now, maybe. But
hindsight, they were probably kicking themselves for using a paint horse.
Yeah, probably, because as you say, very difficult to match it all up. Yeah.
All right, welcome, Kevin. You unmute.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. A company called American Character made a toy line during the 60s when the show was on, and the horses, I mean, you can usually find them on eBay rather cheaply. The actual figures they made a Ben, a little Joe and a Hoss, and then an unnamed villain. Those are kind of expensive. I actually have the little Joe and Hoss figures. But like I said, the horses, you can find out they're not really movable. I mean, they're just like in a pose, and you can put the characters on them with the saddles and all. And there's a bear that goes with it, and that thing is like rare. It's very expensive, but the horses you can find are pretty reasonable. Do you have the bear?
No, I was going. Andy didn't send me the bear. He's only sent me
Oh,
the
okay,
horse.
Yeah, but the American character made those. If you want to do a search on eBay for any of those.
Cool.
Well, tomorrow Marla Fair is hosting the Little Joe portion of Sunday, and she does a website that's called Marla's Movable Men, and that's what she uses is those American character the figures as well as the horses, but she repaints the heads. She like redoes the heads so that they look more similar to the real actors. But she poses them, and she's built the whole Ponderosa and does like storylines with them. So you might want to check that out tomorrow because she's got like tons. If she shows a picture of her studio, she's literally got like tons of them that she's remodeled, and she does I think has a doll business too. So she's able to get the little things and stuff like that, but it's pretty impressive. So that's tomorrow.
It's part of the Ponderosa Ranch House segment. It's part of
Oh,
the
there you go, that
segment.
too.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern. Yes.
Perfect. So Kevin, you'll have to come back and check that out.
Rachel?
I know this would be speculation, and maybe you mentioned this in the video. I'm sorry, I had to run to the restroom at one point. But with the first horse that Adam had, or Purnell, he tossed his head a lot. Do you think that maybe he had his reins really tight sometimes, or the horse was just ready to, was bored and ready to run? Or do you have any idea maybe why he did that so much?
I do, and in the next videos, it's kind of explained, but it really comes down to bad behavior. It's just bad manners. I'm a dog trainer, so you don't reward bad behavior kind of thing. That should have been trained out of him a long time ago. And when you see the thing on the tack, which we'll show right now, I've done 2 on the tack. I explain it more in detail about what they could have used, but that horse, I'm telling you, if it was my horse, I wouldn't have put up with it. But Purnell, he liked it because both horses that he used had exactly the same mannerisms, or exactly the same bad behavior. So that's just my opinion. I mean, I'm not really an expert on horses. I mean, I've had horses and stuff like that. I just think whoever trained those 2 horses should have worked on that a bit more, because that can really hurt. I mean, I've been hit in the head by horses. I've broken my ocular bone from horses. It's not if you're going to get hurt being around horses, it's when. And I've been hurt many, many times on horses. So a head, you can imagine what a 1,200-pound animal's head going up against you could do, the damage it can do. So anyway, so if you just want to go ahead and run those 2 tack videos, then a lot of other questions might be answered as well.
I was just going to run part 1. Is that okay? Will that
Yeah.
answer enough? And then if anybody wants to go find part 2 on Barb's channel, that would be amazing. But it should at least get the conversation started. Is that okay, Barb?
It's good to me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ponderosa North for the love of Bonanza. Let's talk tack, especially with regards to the Cartwright's horses. Saddles, bridles, and bits, and oh my. I've got saddles from my horse days. I have to admit, I just have a basic knowledge of tack. I did have a Western saddle, and I also had an English saddle for my horse, Shane. Here he is. Of course, I was influenced by Little Joe, and when I got a horse, it had to be a paint horse. He's a sorrel and white paint horse, or pinto. There's the saddle on, and this is a picture of him when before I got on him, I let him go into the ring and get the yeehaws out. The last thing you want to be is on a horse who has the yeehaws, and especially in wintertime, they were feeling pretty good. So the Cartwrights didn't have to do that because they were working horses. They worked every day. They didn't need the exercise. My horse was, ridden, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. So he didn't get the exercise that he needed. So I often had to let him get out and let the yeehaws out. And if you have dogs, you know that they get the zoomies. It's the same kind of thing. So I'd let Shane out in the ring, let it get all that energy out, then I'd get on. So today I'm going to talk about bits and saddles. Like I said, I have a general knowledge of this stuff. You really have to have loads and loads of experience to know what bits work best for which horses. You really have to be born to it. I mean, it's years and years of being around horses and just knowing the idiosyncrasies of all these things. Saddle, this is a Western saddle, of course. Got all kinds of stuff on it. This is sort of the SUV of the 1800s. It had all kinds of straps and things on it so that you could put your bedrolls and your guns and, you know, all kinds of stuff. This one has a little pocket for a pick hoof, a hoof pick, I should say, a hoof pick. Let me see if I can get it out. Let me see if there we are. So that's a little hoof pick. So you just make sure you could get in, raise your horse's foot, make sure you pick out any stones or debris or anything. So it was handy to have on your saddle. Of course, a Western saddle is made for working cattle. The horn here, not meant as a handle, excuse me, meant for the rope, to rope the cattle. Very, very hardy, sturdy saddle. And they come in different sizes. You measure the width of the size of the saddle, I think 32 inch to 36 inch, something like that. You'll notice in Hayburner when Joe wants security, he says, "Oh, I don't want that saddle, the size of that thing." No, Haas's saddle would not fit Joe in any way, shape, or form. This is a very simple saddle. Most of the Cartwright saddles had tool work and a suede. Sometimes you can get a suede seat. There is hundreds of combinations and permutations of saddle. This is a English saddle. You can see the irons are different as opposed to the stirrups of this saddle, which are leather usually, typically. If I can get it up. Leather stirrup. These are English saddles are irons. Not much to them, but it's built for a different kind of thing. It's built for jumping over hurdles and things out in the field, hunting fox and stuff like that. So the last thing you want is this thing jabbing you in the gut. So for saddles, I think that's about it. I think the Western saddle is based on the Spanish version of saddle. I mean, all horses came from Spain, and all the boots and tack and everything was based on Spanish design as well. Let's talk about bits. There are many, many combinations and permutations of bits as well. Snaffle bit here, up in the top, and a curb bit, but there's many variations of each. The Cartwrights all used a curb bit, which I'll show you in the pictures that I have of the Cartwrights. Like I said, takes hundreds and hundreds of hours of experience to know which bit will work best for which horse. There's also a bridle that is bitless called a hackamore. Not to be confused with a halter. Here's a halter. Hope I don't drop everything. So this would be, you know, a halter, not a bridle. This is just like a collar for your horse. This is what you would use to put him in the cross ties, to when he's being shoed, or to lead him out of the paddock, or just being able to handle him when he's got no tack on at all. Also with the saddles, different kinds of girth. This would be a Western girth, still got the hair on it, attached in a different way than an English girth, which is this, and it has the buckles which go underneath the saddle. So let's talk about the Cartwright specifically. Here is Ben's horse, Buck. You can see he has a beautiful bridle. Typically this is an English bridle because English bridles have this nose strap. He also has an extra piece down the middle of the horse's face, which is purely decorative, but it's covered in conchos. It's just a beautiful bridle. And of course, on his saddle, he's got ropes and guns and all kinds of stuff. Like I said, this would be your SUV model of saddle. Here's a closer look at Buck's bridle. It's very, very beautiful. Look at all the silver on it. And there you can see that curb style bit. The rein connects to the bottom of it, and as you pull back, the metal at the top will put pressure on the roof of the horse's mouth for control. So they all have different ways of working, kind of thing. Here is Adam's horse Sport. He has a more typical Western bridle. It has no nose piece, no nose strap over the top. That's typically Western. Sometimes they don't even have a brow strap, just simply two straps coming down the side of the face, and a curb bit for Adam as well. Haas, same thing. Very typical Western bridle. Curb bit again. He's got the brow band, but no nose band. Very simple bridle for a working horse. Cochise, on the other hand, he has a more typically English style bridle. Again, a big curb bit on him. All these horses are very, very well behaved. Well, Sport not so much, but they know their job. They know what to do. Here they are all together. You can see the differences in the bridles there. You'll notice Adam's saddle has a breastplate on it, and that is attached to the saddle and goes around the chest of the horse. Oftentimes, cowboys will use that to keep the saddle stabilized, especially when you're cutting cattle and you're jerking in and out like that. What might have been helpful for Sport would have been something called a oh, now I can't think of the word. It's a martingale, and it attaches to the breastplate, to the bottom of the reins in a Y, and that just keeps the horse from rearing its head up a bit, which is something Sport could have made use of. Again, another close-up of Little Joe's bridle. You can really see the curb bit there for him, and another close-up of that breastplate that Adam has on Sport. I think that's it. I think that's mostly what I wanted to tell you about bridles and bits and saddles and things like that. They're had very typical Western gear on their horses. Some differentiated from the other depending on the horse's training and how old they are, and there's all kinds of factors that come into what kind of saddle, what kind of bridle you will use on your horse. There's also a bitless bridle, like I mentioned before, called a hackamore, and it uses pressure on the side of the face. Some horses don't even need a bridle. I mean, they're so well trained and so bomb-proof that you can just get on and go. Not for working, but for hacking or whatever you want to do, something, some sort of pleasure riding. So if you have any questions or if you have anything more to add about talking about tack, I'd love to hear about it. So we'll see you next time on Ponderosa North for the love of Bonanza. Bye for now, everybody.
There is a part 2 to that. So if you want to continue following Barb, there is a part 2 to that, which I'm sure goes into a lot more detail about some of that stuff. So I'll post the link in the chat again.
Yeah, I got a few questions on that, but the other thing I wanted to mention is all the Cartwright horses are geldings, no stallions, no stallions in there, and they're all male. There's no mares. I think Jamie's horse was a mare, and I've been racking my brains trying to think of the name of Jamie's horse. I know it starts with an S, I think, or a P. Can anybody remember the name of Jamie's horse? That's gonna bug me now. It's been bugging me all week. Anyway, I'll find out.
Barb, you have a question? Barb Kiefer?
Well, I was just wondering, is Mitch going to come to the convention?
Oh, he's traveling east. He's part
I
of the Little House event and visiting family, from what we
I
understand.
see. Okay.
Otherwise, he would have loved to have been here. I'm just going
Yeah.
He's deeply, deeply saddened by not being here, and says hello to everybody, and would be able to tell us the horse's name, I'm sure.
I find that out. I will find that out before the weekend is over. I know it's in a Bonanza Gold somewhere.
I'm sure. Well, what was Candy's horse name? Do you know, as far as
Percent.
we'll have to ask Tim Matheson if he knew
Oh,
what
maybe.
Horse name, horse. we say-
Diane Posey answered the horse's name in the chat.
Pepper. Woot, woot, woot.
Thank you, Diane.
With a P.
For bonus points, can you tell us Candy's horse's name and Griff's horse's name?
These horse was ever given a name, but that's
Maybe we'll get Andy to send you a horse prize. No, I'm just
oh,
kidding. Anybody else? Anybody have any comments, questions? Excellent job, Barb. What do you cover in the part 2?
well, people started asking me questions about, I can't exactly remember what they were, and I was just explaining in more depth or answering their questions with the Tack.
Posted her YouTube link there. So if you want to go check out part 2, you are welcome to do that, as well as her 98 other videos. Oh, the 2 of them we're going to see later. 2 more we're going to see later. Somebody had mentioned earlier, seems like a lot of people love to talk about the way Adam's horses, so heavy-handed. So you were talking about I guess the breast thing. Is that to help keep him controlled as well? The piece that was on the front of his horse?
They chose not to use a martingale. That would have helped that head flinging. But the other thing that I'll bring your attention to the end of springtime when they're riding into town. You will notice that Sport is doing flying lead changes all the way through. That is dressage moves. Now, whether Purnell was asking him to do these moves, I don't know. But he is literally doing dressage moves in that final scene. So if you want to take a look at that final scene, and you'll see him doing a lead, what's called a lead change. Every step is a different lead. So your right lead, you'd be going to the left. The left lead. All things you'd be asking your horse to do with the reins and with your legs. I think there was thoroughbred in Sport, and that just makes them more high strung. That's just the nature of the breed.
Barb, do you suppose that Purnell was giving him those cues accidentally?
I don't think so. Purnell was probably, as far as rating the riders, Purnell was the best rider. Joe was very close behind Purnell as far as, the way they rode their horses and their expertise. And then Dan and Lauren, but I mean, they all improved immensely over the time period. I mean, if you watch that opening scene that we saw yesterday when they're following the truck, they're just hanging on for dear life, especially Lauren. He has no idea what he's doing, but as you get further on, the comfort and the trust between him and Buck they're one. I mean, they totally trust each other. They totally get each other. His riding improved immensely. He became an expert rider, but in the beginning, Purnell but he had done a few Westerns, I think, before Bonanza. So he was pretty comfortable. And I think Andy told me that he took lessons as well, but his comfort on a horse was fantastic. He wasn't coming off any horses, and especially a horse like Sport, who really needed, he really needed a firm hand, that one. Rachel?
Well, you just answered one of my questions because I had heard that Purnell had taken lessons. But my other question is about, I guess it would be called a trick horse. I think it was in the episode Sam Hill where the horse hands the hammer to Hoss, I think is the character. I think that horse is it has like multiple names like Beauty, Fury, Highlandale horse. Do you know anything about that horse and how many episodes of Bonanza he was on by chance?
But I mean, the Wranglers would take some of the questions I had after this Tack one was that why wouldn't Purnell do this, or why wouldn't Purnell change this? And it's up to the Wranglers. It's up to the trainers. The horses would be all tacked up, and they go, "Here's Sport, Purnell, act." He would have no input put into the tack or anything like that. I mean, why he wanted a horse that was that bright? Maybe because he felt Adam would want a horse like that. But no, the Wranglers would train those horses to do different tricks. Like Mike trained Cochise to do, he was always doing swing mounts onto Cochise, which is very difficult. Nobody else in TV land except for Lee Majors on Big Valley did a swing mount. Very, very up. You need a lot of upper body strength to do a swing mount. He'd get Cochise to rear. I mean, that's all trick training. It's like training a dog to do a trick. And Mike would put in the time, and he'd do pivot turns and all kinds of things. That handing the hammer and everything, a trainer would be doing that. It's like old Chiba, same thing. That you can see that the trainers are taking care of old Chiba, not Mike or Kiefer. You have a question?
Oh, well, I just had a general comment about the write-up scene, how, at the beginning of the show, that must have been a very difficult scene for everybody to shoot as far as keeping the horses straight, under control, not too close, not too far.
Well, I think by that time, in the very beginning, like I said, following, they didn't have a clue. But by the time they're riding up Bourne's Meadow there, they were those 4 horses knew each other. And that's the thing too, is that horses have a hierarchy. And I'm not sure who was the leader of the pack, because they live in, but if you know about horses and they live in a herd, there was one horse that is the alpha horse. And when you let them in at night, they come in order of pecking order. And
Oh, wow.
out in the morning, you let that lead horse out first, and you will see that sometimes a young colt will come in that's 2 or 3 years old into a herd, and they'll be fighting. And it's like last man standing. So who the alpha horse was in the herd of I don't know. And oftentimes it's a mare. Oftentimes it's a female horse that is the alpha. You never have stallions mixed in there. They live very lonely lives. Stallions, they don't. You don't mix stallions in with a herd unless it's it's really trustworthy stallion. But yeah, so there's a definite hierarchy as far as horses.
Go ahead, Carol.
I'm actually raising my hand for Mary because her hand won't raise. She'd like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
No, I had just mentioned earlier that part of the problem with Purnell's horse was he was heavy-handed, so it was partially his fault.
Yeah.
And I said, if you watch where Michael rode the same horse on in the Crucible, where he galloped up, the horse was not tossing its head. So I think that Michael was more right-handed than Purnell.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's how good a rider Michael was.
Yeah, and what they needed for both of those horses was a tie down.
Yes.
Which would go from the bottom of the bridle to underneath his chest, but they didn't use. I think they did use one briefly, but then they stopped using it. But I do agree that the head tossing can be deadly.
Yeah, that would have been a martingale they would have put on there. I never saw a martingale used on.
Yeah, but I think Purnell liked the spirited kind of horse.
Definitely. Otherwise, why would he replace, like Candy with Judy? I mean, they're virtually the same temperament.
But he was, in fact, the best rider. I think Michael was more athletic than a good rider, because at first his toes were pointing down all the time, and when you ride, you need to have your heels down hard.
Yep.
And he got better, but Purnell was, in fact, the best rider. Warren was scary.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have your arms very still, and he always looked like he was going to fly off that horse the way his arms flapped.
Arm flapping on Dan.
Yeah, it was hard to watch sometimes, the so-called cowboys. But yeah, like I said, I grew up on a horse farm, so I kind of know a bit.
Yeah, no, that's true. Purnell didn't help. I mean, I think he liked it, but yeah, that head flinging can cause a lot of broken bones if you're in the wrong place at the time, and head injuries.
He was beautiful, though.
He was beautiful. And remember, Dan fell off at the end of, I season 3 or season 4 and broke his
They
collarbone.
both fell off. They both fell
Yeah.
off their horses.
Canal hurt his back, but you can see Dan in a sling for the last couple of episodes.
Mhm.
Broke his collarbone.
Yeah, and that's what happens mostly in when you fall off a horse because you're going over top and you land on your shoulder. Andy, do you remember what year the horrific incident happened with Cochise in the barn? And there's
It was during the production of the 6th year.
there's
I-
in
you
65.
could. It was probably 1964. It was before the end of the 6th year. So it was probably late in the year, maybe the fall of 1964.
And they never found who did it.
Correct.
Never-
Very sad.
Here.
And the consensus was it was not even so much a crime committed against the Bonanza company, but against the Fat Jones stables,
Yeah.
because it was Fat Jones stables that owned the horses, and the Cartwright horses were just the most prominent ones. And as I recall, others were injured, but only Cochise's injuries were so severe that he had to be euthanized afterward.
I had mentioned 63.
And if you watch the 1964 season episodes closely, you could see where Michael starts riding a lookalike horse, but I would say it's probably not much before the last maybe 10 episodes of the season.
He was in the episode The Hostage, and that was 64, I believe.
Well, that was early in the production. Yeah.
Yes, but it was the original Cochise that was in that episode. Because I think Ben.
Correct.
They
In
probably
later shows like Dead and Gone, You Own the World, Patchwork Man, those all had the alternate paint.
He went through a handful of paints before he found one that worked for him, I guess. Because they were switching up quite a bit there. Wow.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess we can speculate as to why there were so many. I suppose it's, as you say, because it was a question of matching the horse to the rider, not only in temperament, but I guess to some extent in looks. And they also, of course, had stunt horses, depending on what needed to be done. And if it was a ride from a long distance, when it most likely wasn't even Michael anyway, of course, that would have been a different horse.
So we're about to wrap this up. I'm just going to make my last comments. I want to put in a plug for Robert Fuller. Was very good at getting on his horse. He had a nice little swift hop that only a dancer can do, it seems like. So if you ever watched Laramie, he's really nice to watch getting on his horse. And the other comment I wanted to make is how come the little Joe fans are not more outraged when Joe got the white horse, the gift, and then he also had the stallion. He was so excited when he got stallion.
Yeah,
Everybody's
lost them
reaction like, poor Cochise. He seemed to be the only one who ever got other horses besides his signature horse.
Well, Adam had Thunder. I think he had a stallion, a black stallion, and I think.
Oh, is that the one when he goes in there to show us that chick, that girl, the woman in the barn? I think, oh, okay.